Thank you. What a remarkable honor to be on this panel with these brilliant and wise people who have given us so many insights. Can I just tell you one thing? If you looked at Rob's computer from up here, the image of Malala was so incredibly beautiful. And someday we will have a technology that can take that little picture on the computer and put it up there on the screen. And people will see her as well as she looked there. What an incredible hero for all of us. So it is right that we recall and understand what is happening today in Libya. It is something that we cannot turn away from, even as we speak of other issues. And I will reference the words of an American president, an American Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, who said in 1821, "When America goes abroad searching for monsters to destroy, invariably we destroy democracy at home." Our military interventions, the violence that we send out from this country, comes back to haunt us, not merely in the blowback that a Chalmers Johnson might speak of, but in a diminution of we the people, in a diminution of our basic democratic institutions. No Congress declared a war on Libya. No American people rose up and said to drop those bombs. This is a moment in which we should be profoundly sad for what is being done, not merely to innocent people in a foreign land, but to our democracy at home. Let me also recognize that today at Quantico in Virginia, Daniel Ellsberg, one of America's great heroes, and Ann Wright, Colonel Ann Wright, another of America's great heroes, and dozens of others were arrested protesting the treatment of Private Bradley Manning. Like Ellsberg, I recognize the value of whistleblowers who make it their purpose to assure that the American people know what is done in their name, but without their informed consent.
Talk about it.
What our government has done in its treatment of Bradley Manning, no matter what its role in WikiLeaks, but what our government has done in its treatment of Bradley Manning and its attempts to silence WikiLeaks must be denounced by anyone who believes that we should have freedom of the press and a press that speaks truth to power. I am sad for Libya and for the Libyan people. I am sad for Bradley Manning and for those who love and know him. And we do recognize those sadnesses. But let us also allow ourselves a moment of joy, because I come from the state of Wisconsin. Let me tell you, I've been writing about social movements since I was 11 years old. I rode my bicycle down the main street of Union Grove, Wisconsin, town of 2,000 people. I went to the weekly newspaper and I said, I want to write about politics and protest and democracy. And it was such a small town that the editor, publisher, reporter, photographer, and janitor of the weekly newspaper said, all right, I'll give you $5 a story and $1 a picture. And I've been writing about this stuff ever since. Well, let me tell you something. As optimistic, as hopeful as I have been, as so many times as I've worked with so many people, so many beautiful people in this room on so many struggles, I never allowed myself, never allowed myself to imagine the experience I had a week ago today, when I stood on the steps of the state capitol of Wisconsin, a place where I was brought as a child by my grandmother, the daughter of a Wisconsin progressive who did not believe in a Democratic or Republican Party, who joined with the socialists and the progressives of our state to speak truth to power and to say that corporations must not control our democratic life. When I went to that Capitol as a child, that very Capitol, I stood on those same steps last Saturday, and I looked out at a crowd of 150,000 people standing down the streets, down the alleys, down the avenues, filling every bit of space. Young girls who had climbed 60, 70 feet into the trees, standing along the branches. And all of these people chanting, "This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like." The people outside their house demanding that power listen to them. What's happened in Wisconsin in the last few weeks is an amazing thing. It is a struggle for democracy. It is a struggle for worker rights. It is a struggle for economic justice, understood as such by the people who are engaged in it, understood better by those in the streets than by those who would presume to be their leaders. But it is also a struggle for a great slice of pizza. And if there is anyone in this room who has not heard the story of Ian's Pizza in Madison, let me tell it to you now. If you go on Google, using all that new technology, and you Google capital of Wisconsin and pizza, you get Ian's. It's a pizzeria a block from the Capitol. And when it was learned that thousands of Wisconsinites had occupied the capital of Wisconsin, sleeping there through the night, day after day, to protest an assault on worker rights, someone, somewhere out there in the world, Googled capital and pizza. And they got Ian's, and they sent an order of pizza to the protesters. And somebody else heard about it, and they did the same thing. And within a week, people from all 50 states and more than 60 nations around the world had called pizzas in to the Capitol. And when we learned that the union that represents the workers at the Suez Canal in Egypt had called in a multiple order of pizzas, we knew that we had come full circle in our struggle. And when the weather observers in Antarctica, who are members of a union I didn't even know existed, called in their orders of pizza, we were able to say that every continent on the planet stood in solidarity with the people of Wisconsin. Now, we've got such wise speakers here tonight. I promise not just to tell you stories about pizza, although I could. But let me offer a few notions here that are so important about what's going on. It is a delight to report on immediate actions, on developments of the moment that are real and meaningful. But let me say a couple of things that I think are very, very important. When I went to one of the first big demonstrations, I noticed a sign. It was a very, very cold day. It was about 10 degrees outside. If you know, I don't know how many of you know about the, if you're not born in Wisconsin, you may not. You know about ice fishing? You carve a hole in the ice, you go and fish. Well, one of the sub-slogans of this movement in Wisconsin is "We fish through ice," i.e., there's not much that's going to scare us away. Weather, snow, these things won't stop us. But I was out on a very cold day, and I think this sums up, because many people ask me, were we influenced by Egypt? And there's a guy walking in front of me, a big sign, and it said, "I thought Cairo would be warmer." And the fact of the matter is, Egypt was a huge influence on Wisconsin. A dramatic influence. International solidarity played a fundamental role in everything that has happened. Because those of us on the left have ridden the bus to Washington for the big demonstration. We've had that wonderful day holding our signs on Central America, or Iraq, or Afghanistan. And then, at the end of the day, we've gotten on the bus and gone home. But in Egypt, they didn't go home. They stayed 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, 18 days. And it happened that on the last of those 18 days, when Mubarak stepped down, that was the day before Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker announced his dictatorial proposals for our state. And we're not the brightest people in Wisconsin, we make no claims, but we can put one and one together. And you know what people kept saying to me on those first days as these demonstrations built? And they kept coming day after day. I'd say, you know, look, I cover politics, I know you're not supposed to come back. And they said, we are coming back. And I said, for how long? And they said, 18 days. 18 days. Egypt taught people that a demonstration cannot end when the rally is finished. That you come back the next day, and the next day, and the next day, until you win. We also learned from our own radical traditions. Wisconsin is a Midwestern state, far from the East Coast and the West Coast, a place where there was always great farmer and labor traditions, a progressive movement of independent politics that rejected the Democratic and Republican parties, deeply rooted in the soil of our state, and understood, taught in our schools. And we took that in. And the thing is, that as we organized those early rallies, as people came to those events, we understood that we were in a moment of immense popular education. And that's a very important thing. We don't talk enough about that. You know, we think, and I know not people in this room, you're so smart and you're so good, but some people think that we get education from school, or from a newspaper, or from the news on TV. Well, let me tell you, I've seen something that will blow your mind. A 15-year-old kid with a bullhorn standing in front of 3,000 people at the capital of Wisconsin on a cold winter night saying, in 1887 the workers of Bayside, Wisconsin went into the streets, and recounting every bit of Wisconsin labor history, and the crowd listening and applauding and saying, this is who we are labor radicals. We are progressives. We are farmer labor rights. And we rise again against corporate power. So let me just take us around here full circle. So many stories to tell, so many good things to say. When Governor Scott Walker announced his proposal, which I'm so glad they had these brilliant speakers before me, because they reminded us of neoliberalism and of all of these